The Jicarilla War was a 5-year conflict between the U.S. Army and Jicarilla Apaches and Ute Indian tribe who were allied with the Apaches. The war started as a result of the Apaches and Utes raiding settlers on the Santa Fe Trail. The Santa Fe Trail was a major thoroughfare used by settlers, traders, teamsters, and others from 1821 to 1880. The first overland trip from western Missouri to Santa Fe, New Mexico took place in 1821 when a party of men seeking trade began a journey through Kansas, Colorado, and ultimately on to Santa Fe. That first trip took 71 days and was surprisingly successful from a financial standpoint, and thus began an almost 60-year period during which the trail was a main east-west corridor which helped open up the western U.S. to immigration and commerce. Settlers extensively used the trail as a means of pushing westward to settle the mostly unsettled territories of the West. Those areas were untamed, with almost no law and order, and fraught with danger for the settlers and their families. Most Indian tribes of the early era of the Santa Fe Trail were free roaming and did not take kindly to intrusions into their native lands. Two tribes that had lived for centuries in the area were the Jicarilla Apaches and Utes. They considered intrusions into the land where they lived and hunted as unlawful. They were understandably hostile to the intruders and were particularly unforgiving of the settlers who were quite vulnerable to the Native Americans. In 1849, they began a campaign of brutal attacks on white Americans along the Santa Fe Trail. The first major incident which caused an escalation in hostilities was subsequently named the White Massacre, not because of the color of the people involved, but because the leader was named James White. Mr. White, his wife, daughter, servant, and several other men broke off from a wagon train and headed for Santa Fe. James White was a trader and veteran of the trail. His party was approached on 2 occasions by a group of Apaches and Utes requesting presents, but were refused. A third encounter resulted in an Indian attack in which all except Mrs. White, her daughter, and slave were killed. The 3 prisoners were forced to leave with the Indians. A detachment of cavalry soldiers were sent out to track the war party and hopefully secure the release of the hostages. Kit Carson joined the cavalry, and they eventually located the band of renegade warriors. Carson wanted to immediately advance on the Indians, but the cavalry leader ordered his troops not to follow. When they finally did attack, they found Mrs. White, who had only a few minutes earlier been assassinated. Carson later wrote in his memoirs that the event haunted him for life. He felt that if his outfit had attacked when he requested, they could have saved Mrs. White. The daughter and slave were consequently discovered to have likewise perished at the hands of the Jicarillas and Utes. Various incidents took place in the next 5 years as the two warring factions became more and more distrustful of each other. One of the more famous incidents was called the Wagon Mound Massacre. Mail wagons operated along the Santa Fe Trail and carried not only mail but passengers as well. A wagon with 3 mail carriers and 7 passengers was attacked near Wagon Mound, New Mexico, and all the travelers were killed. At the time, this encounter was called, quote, the most daring murder ever committed by the American Indians, end quote. In 1854, the Army's pressure on the Utes and Jicarillas intensified. In response to a government beef contractor's loss of cattle to the Indians, a battle along the Canadian River resulted in the death of Chief Lobo Blanco and 4 of his warriors at the hands of the Army's 2nd Dragoon. Another loss of stock and death of 2 herdsmen at the hands of Indians brought retaliation from the Army, in which 60 cavalrymen fought 250 Apache and Ute warriors, resulting in the death of 22 soldiers and another 36 wounded. A week later, a battle that would come to be known as the Battle of Ojo Caliente Canyon took place. A large contingent of U.S. soldiers defeated a group of approximately 150 warriors. That battle was deemed even more significant because of 2 participants. Kit Carson guided the Army at Ojo Caliente Canyon. One of the participating Army officers was Lieutenant George Sykes, who later commanded the V Corps of the Potomac in the American Civil War. After Ojo Caliente, the Indians were forced to disperse, and without a camp, many died in extremely cold weather. Although there were a few small raids and skirmishes after Ojo Caliente, for all intents and purposes, the Jicarilla War ended. The Plains Indian Wars would last another 25 or so years, but the inevitable downfall of the Plains Indian culture of the western United States was well underway. If you enjoyed this video, give a thumbs up, click on the bell for notification of future videos, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching.